So we're here at the Capital City Museum, and I'm here with John Downs. You're the curator here of this museum, and we're here to talk about one of my absolute all-time favorite topics, and that is fishing reels. And you guys have some very unique reels that really started the history of bait casting reels.
That's right. Frankfort has the unique distinction of being the place where multiplying gear bait casting reels were first produced in great quantities and perfected. You know, other cities have historic people, historic buildings, historic sites, but the history of the bait casting reel and its early mass production is really just about Frankfort.
And tell me a little bit about what a multiplying reel is.
The reel, you know, if you spin it once, it will bring in one spool of line. The multiplying reels and what the industry standard that the Meeks and the Milams came up with here was 4.3 to 1. So you could reel in much faster.
So and one crank on the reel is 4 revolutions on the spool.
That's right, that's right. And if you're familiar with smallmouth bass fishing in central Kentucky, they're pretty fast and wily. So being able to bring in line quick was part of the beauty of these particular reels for the people that bought them and collected them.
We actually here today have some of the tooling that was made to produce these reels as well.
Right. Yeah. We have very fortunate, have this very unique piece of American history, the lathe that the Meeks bought in 1830s, maybe, probably from Switzerland. And it's likely that every one of these reels in our exhibit and every one of the Meek and or Milam reels in the country have parts that were made on this machine. But this machine was also, it was the Meeks, and then then it became Meek and Milams. Then when they broke up, it became Milams, and then when Milam's son died, it was sold to George W. Gale, and he used it to make Gale reels, and Gale's son, Clarence, was making very inexpensive fly fishing reels out of aluminum. And then the market fell out for his stuff. Come to find out, some Japanese manufacturers were making copies of his reels. They even said George W. Gale and Son, Frankfort, Kentucky, but they came in boxes covered in Japanese and at half the price what he could make them for.
Wow.
Well, he was given a government contract to make parts for Clinton Engineer Works, which as it turns out was the front for the Manhattan Project. And so he was making parts, he was making 20 different parts with this lathe for the Manhattan Project, which is where they enriched the uranium for the atomic bombs that were later dropped on Japan. So he was making 20 parts. Only one of them was the real part they wanted. But to kind of keep it secret in case anybody find out, you know, what little Clarence Gale was doing in little old Frankfort, Kentucky. But he made parts for the Manhattan.
So full circle, Japan sending over reels that literally almost put a man out of business.
That's right.
That had to take a second job, that did not know it, unbeknownst to him, developed was working on a project that ended up being used to bomb Japan.
Yeah,
that's karma.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, I'm excited to get in here and see the reels and walk through some of the history of it. Very interesting. Well, let's go take a look and see what we've got.
Okay. This has been C. Milam. That's him fishing. This is his reel and his split cane fishing rod.
A split cane fishing rod. That is literally 4 or 5 pieces of cane put together.
That's right.
It's thin as that is, if you were to take that and separate that, that's 4 or 5 pieces that have been put together to make one piece that's much smaller than a pencil.
Originally, when they made the first reels, now we're talking the 1830s, they were brass. About 1840, they developed the ability to electroplate. So they made German silver, which actually is not silver. It's tin, copper, and zinc. And these reels, you look at these, you got to know they're 150 years old or older, and they are remarkably resilient. These reels, now the click's on, which is why it's making noise.
I've got reels today that I've been using that have been made in the 90s that aren't that smooth. This reel is 100-something years old.
They were precision made. They were made by clockmakers, silversmiths, and these men made the reels like they would a clock. So they had brass and steel gears, and they were multiplying reels. That's what made them so famous. If you look over on the wall, we have an example from a catalog. At one point, there were 660 different choices that you could make.
Really?
Size, material, type of grasp, where you wanted the handle. There were all permeations of
Wow.
choices.
Back then, were they filing patents on these ideas?
No, Ben Meeks said, if anybody can make a reel as well as I can, go for it.
So there
He
was never.
Yes, and these reels, when he made them, they were $50.
Yeah.
That was a lot of money.
Whoa, yeah.
And so they were owned by people of means.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested in this for a lot of reasons. Obviously, I love fishing. I love bait casting reels, but my dad's a machinist.
Ah.
And he loves tinkering around with stuff like this. So
That's how you knew so much about the lathe.
well, I knew a lot about the lathe. I've ran a lathe quite a few
Oh.
times, but yeah, my dad's a machinist and a perfectionist. So he would, I'm sure he'll be down here to see this exhibit. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
taking me through this. I really do appreciate it.